All right, hi everyone. Welcome to another MakerDAO Collateral call. Today's February 13th, 2021 at 18 hours UTC. Today I'm joined by a bunch of people interested by Maker and the community, and more in particularly, we have the xDAI team. Very interesting project. I'm a big fan of. And we also have Patricio from POAP, the proof of attendance protocol that is joining us as a special guest. And he'll be describing a little bit more his own project afterwards as well. So yeah, Andrew, Igor, if you can take it away.
Yeah, let me introduce myself. I am Igor. I'm working on product and operation side of xDAI and some other projects which are used in the xDAI ecosystem, like Block Scout, which is an open source block explorer, and Token Bridge, which is powering Ethereum to xDAI bridges. So xDAI is not a new project. It's a third year of the project actually, and as far as I know, it's one of the first derivative of DAI, which gave this road to many amazing projects like with wrapped DAI. Yeah, so Andrew, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew. I am a technical writer with xDAI, so mostly involved with the documentation, some technical marketing, as well as just creating explainers for some of the things that we offer a lot of our projects as well. So I'm going to be just running through a quick presentation to introduce some of the things with xDAI. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with xDAI. For those of you who aren't, I'll just run through kind of the main features, a little bit of the history behind the project. As Igor mentioned, we've been live for a couple of years now, so it's not a new project. And some of the adoption and usage that we've seen, especially over the past year. I guess I will share my screen here and start it up. All right. Can you guys see the slides there? Cool. Okay. So just to get started, sometimes there's a little bit of confusion about what xDAI is. And part of that is because xDAI is both a network and a token. The xDAI network is an EVM-based layer 2 sidechain. We run the same hash set as Ethereum mainnet. And what makes it unique is that it is a stable chain. So not only does it have a consensus process that differs from Ethereum in that there are faster blocks, but of course there are these stable low-cost transactions, which really differentiates it from other sidechains and layer 2 solutions. Besides being a network, xDAI is also the currency of the network. And as you know, it is created from DAI. So without DAI, there is no xDAI currently. Basically, the process is that DAI is locked in a contract, and it is then minted on the xDAI chain, used on xDAI, and if we want to bridge it back to Ethereum, we use the bridge to then move it back onto the Ethereum mainnet, and it's burned on the xDAI chain. So essentially when you...
Andrew, can you quickly explain what the same patch set is for us mortals?
Sure. Igor?
So it means that the network is fully compatible with Ethereum mainnet, right? So if you look into other layer 2 solutions, sometimes they're taking, like most of them are taking a path of forking Ethereum without basically contributing back, right? So they're just, usually they're taking Go Ethereum, making some modifications in the consensus and start to add opcodes and so forth, right? So we decided to have a path where our consensus and all modifications that we're making to xDAI are also contributed to two core Ethereum clients. So xDAI is supported natively without any like additional like commands to run it or patch sets in Nevermind and Open Ethereum, which are two core Ethereum clients. And that's what we meant by keeping the same patch set level as Ethereum 1.0, right? So Ethereum developers can be sure that when they're using xDAI, they have the same computational environment without new weird opcodes or some unexpected behavior or some new RPC calls, and also that when those clients are updated. Let's say recently, all clients are working on Berlin hard fork, which is going in 2021. So xDAI will be also supporting this Berlin hard fork, and clients are making sure that xDAI is also getting all these updates as mainnet. And as far as I know, it's the only proof of stake consensus which is included in core Ethereum clients. Right. So there are some POA consensuses, there are some proof of work consensus, which is ETH hash, but xDAI's consensus, which is called as PostDAO, it's the only proof of stake consensus which is included into two core Ethereum clients. And that's a lot of work to do.
Right. And the other question I had is DAI to xDAI is not 1-to-1, right? Because I remember once minting xDAI and I got, I don't know, maybe 10x or something around that. I can't remember the exact numbers.
No, xDAI to DAI is 1-to-1. So it's actually looking back in history. xDAI started with Psi as a collateral, right? And after Psi migrated to DAI, we migrated xDAI from xPsi to xDAI, right? So now it's 1-to-1 to DAI. So all native coins of xDAI are 100% backed by locked DAI on Ethereum side, and this is not used in any other reasons besides locking, right? So we have a DSR integration which can benefit people who are using xDAI one day, but for now DSR is not enabled by obvious reasons.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
So to just extrapolate on that, when you're using xDAI, you're using DAI in the same amount. So right now, the DAI locked on xDAI is 1.4 million DAI, and that fluctuates based on usage. It's been up and down. So a little bit on our history. As I mentioned, we've been around since 2018. xDAI first came about at ETH Berlin, and the idea there, stablecoins were really starting to come on, and the idea was to bridge a stablecoin to create a stable chain. Within a couple of months, we had released the first version at DevCon 4 and had a few validators that came on at that point, including Mariano Conti, who was running a validator. And the reason we selected DAI, as Igor mentioned, it had the roadmap to multi-collateral asset, as well as the fact that it was algorithmically stable and is, as well as the development community. In 2019, we really focused on events. That was kind of the first big use case that came about for xDAI. And I don't know how many of you were at ETH Denver 2019. That was kind of the coming out party in a way. Yeah. So, over 3,000 attendees were using the xDAI chain to purchase food at food trucks and to navigate the conference. And the big innovation there was the burner wallet. So that really enabled users to have DAI in their pockets. It wasn't a secure of a wallet. The keys are stored on local storage, but it was perfect for pocket money and for that kind of application. And that continued throughout 2019 with other Ethereum events, as well as at the end of 2019, Splunk, who's a company that we've worked with quite a bit, used a modified burner wallet at their conference. That was pretty amazing. It was with over 10,000 attendees who had never really used crypto before. So it's kind of making that bridge between crypto and non-crypto users. 2020, we've seen a ton of adoption. One of the major things that we pushed out this year, of course, was the stake governance token. So that's used for staking on xDAI. It's also, we've started using it for stake weighted governance so that users can can use it for stake weighted voting. We've had some big partnerships this year with Gnosis and Chainlink and a ton of new projects. Patricio is one example who will be speaking a little bit later about POAP. We've also had many projects move over. I'll talk about some of them a little bit later, as well as our public consensus, which is now, was just launched at the end of the year. It was actually going in April 2020 with nominated validators and is now fully public with delegators on chain. So let me speak briefly about some of the features that make xDAI unique.
Andrew, let's break for a couple seconds just to check if someone has questions before we jump
sure.
into.
Sorry to be speeding through it here.
No, it's good. We have time. Well, unless you don't, but
no.
Are there
time.
any questions for Andrew at this point or Igor? All right, shy crew today. Let's keep going.
Okay, and we'll have time also at the end for any questions that come up based on everything. So one of the features that really differentiates xDAI, as I mentioned, is the fact that it's a stable chain. So this enables peer-to-peer payments. That was really the first application that we were looking at. You only need xDAI to make transactions and to pay for gas. And it also creates an environment where there's stable payments for buyers and for sellers. There's also accurate cost planning for larger projects. So for example, it kind of follows that AWS model that people expect, that projects expect, where you know how much things are going to cost ahead of time. It's not going to be based on volatility of the market, so you can plan for those things. And it's allowed applications to expand to xDAI, so to move some of their resource-intensive operations over to xDAI. This is in particular with DAOs, for example, where making a proposal right now on Ethereum and voting on a proposal is really expensive. So that limits participation, and it also, makes people not want to put out proposals. So if they can move that governance to the xDAI chain, all of a sudden it makes DAOs more workable right now, because as we know, many things on Ethereum are difficult to use at the moment. And I think one thing that really sets it apart too is even with DAI on mainnet right now, if you want to send a small amount of DAI to someone, it's prohibitively expensive. And so that kind of limits the ways in which DAI can be used. If you transfer it over to xDAI, suddenly it's no problem to send small amounts to other people. Any questions on that aspect or anything to add? Okay. Interoperability is a huge reason.
You have a question on the chat.
Oh, sorry. Let's see that one.
I can read it if you want. It's from Mio. He asked, even if gas is paid in DAI, which is stable, what prevents gas from increasing over time, so breaking the stable property of xDAI?
Oh, I think you should think about this as like a two-dimensional volatility, right? So you have like a native token price and gas price, right? In Ethereum mainnet, you have 2 dimensions, and on xDAI you have only 1, right? So gas price can increase, but the native token will stay the same. So the second argument is that the way the gas price is maintained, we set the lower boundary, but for sure people can pay more, and in Ethereum there are built-in mechanisms that transactions with higher gas price are getting more priority. So this mechanism is still in place, but also we are working on what we call it transaction prioritization. And if you think about open internet, most services that we're using on daily basis are using some type of quality of service prioritization of traffic. So we're also working on the same thing on side chains that validators can select on a non-consensus level. They can select priority for different types of transactions. So we have some examples how this priority can be set, for example, for bridges, that bridges or consensus itself are prioritized over other types of transactions. And what we expect in the future that side chains will get more and more usage, and we'll see increase of traffic, and also the Moore's law is still in place, and we have increase in computational power every year, right? So these two things will follow each other, and the resources like gas will be used mostly for prioritization and denial of service prevention, but not as a barrier to enter the smart contract world, right? So that's what we're working on right now. So that's to summarize that for sure more adoption can drive this mechanics of increasing of gas price per transaction, but the native token will stay stable, and we see this mechanic used everywhere in the world, right? Basically, so most services we're buying from SaaS or platform as a service are nominated in stable tokens, right? So that's my sorry for the long
Something that
answer.
I'm not sure if it's clear is that, and please guys correct me if I'm wrong, because I might, I probably am, but xDAI is like a side chain which is POS instead of proof of work, so it's proof of stake. So we have these validators. One example that was mentioned was the one from Mariano. So it's cheaper to start with to process these transactions. And something that I find really cool that Patrice explained to me a couple months ago is that my address in Ethereum is the same address in xDAI. So it's super, it's quite good for interoperability and bridges.
We're using the same key derivation,
Yeah.
but there is a protection from a replay attack, so it's not possible to replay transaction from Ethereum on xDAI and vice versa. So it's in place.
Thank you.
Great. So as we were speaking about, interoperability is a big item with side chains coming on. The primary bridge that we have is the DAI to xDAI bridge. And we have worked to decentralize that. That has been one of the critiques of xDAI, is that it's lacking in decentralization. So that's one of our focuses, especially over this past year. We've added 6 of 11 multi-sig for governance that determines.
It's 7 of 13 already.
Oh, wow. Keeps going up. Yeah, we also added a new validator to the bridge. I think yesterday, sync node was officially added. So yeah, those numbers are changing to increasingly decentralize the bridge. This year, we also added the Omni bridge, which has really extended the applications available on xDAI. So now all our ERC20 tokens can be moved from Ethereum to xDAI. And this is a permissionless system. You can just put in a token and bridge it over and then start using it on xDAI. Right now, we're finalizing a reverse mechanism so that tokens that are minted on the xDAI chain can actually be moved back to Ethereum. We're also working to decentralize that bridge as well with the same kind of multi-sig. And finally, we've got an NFT bridge that is nearing completion, which will also increase interoperability with ERC 721s between Ethereum and xDAI. A little bit about our new proof of stake consensus. It's called Proof of Stake Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And as Igor mentioned, it's implemented in Solidity. It's a dual layered consensus. So there, and it's actually pluggable on the protocol level. Right now, we're using Aura, and in the future, we may integrate Honey Badger BFT as well. And as I mentioned, this has actually been going on since April of 2020 with nominated validators, and they've been using the stake to protect the protocol. And now we've got the public delegation happening. I believe we have 135 delegates at the moment, and 15 validators. So a few other attributes of this consensus: it features on-chain randomness, and that's actually available to smart contract developers as well. They can grab that directly on-chain. And through the governance process, things can be changed on-chain. For example, we just had a community vote to lower the amount that delegates would place. Originally, it was 1,000 stake, and it's been lowered now to 200 stake based on community signals. So as far as the stake token, as I mentioned, it was released last year in April, and the primary function is for protocol protection for staking for validators and delegators, as well as stake weighted voting. And one interesting feature about stake is that it doesn't need to just be used on xDAI because it lives on Ethereum. It can be bridged to other chains and used as a staking token in that capacity as well. So we like to talk about multi-chain staking capacity for stake. It's not just limited to the xDAI chain. Just a few numbers here. With stake, the total supply right now is approximately 8.5 million. And that will grow on an annual basis. There are emissions. That's how validators and delegators are rewarded. There's also an easy staking application on Ethereum where people can lock their stake on Ethereum. And that serves to limit the supply of stake. Right now, the circulating amount is 3.7 million. And as I mentioned, in easy staking, approximately 30% of stake is locked right now in easy staking. So 30% of the circulating supply. And staked on PostDAO is about 435,000. So quite a bit of the circulating stake right now is actually locked in the protocols. We have the number of addresses here. And this is a little bit misleading because there are also contract addresses where individuals have more stake locked. And then we have trading on centralized exchanges as well as decentralized. Uniswap is actually the most used exchange for stake right now. And I think you can see these numbers here. We've got over 5 million in liquidity and 1.3 in volume per day. That was just taken yesterday. So again, these things differ day to day. Any questions?
You had one on the chat.
Can anyone run a validator, Andrew?
Yeah, that's right. Well, they have to provide the required amount of staking token.
Yeah.
But yeah, the system is open for open participation, and anyone can apply as a candidate, and with enough delegation can be elected into a staking epoch. So consensus is built using staking epochs, weekly staking epochs, and all those parameters are configurable. And this is a good part of having consensus in Solidity, that all these modifications are tracked on chain. So let's say if a new validator is added or some parameters like minimum staking amount are changed, all changes are on chain, and any concerned third party can observe those changes. So there is nothing like core developers replacing binaries on validators if they want to change something like on some other side chains. So everything is tracked on chain.
Did
I
we
was also
cover? Sorry, go ahead, Juan.
No, Tim, please.
Did we? Sorry, to unpack that question a little bit more. Did we cover how much stake is needed to become a validator? Did I miss that stat?
Yeah, when we launched the consensus, it was 20,000 stake tokens required that we put into the like initial amount, and that's what is the amount for now, right? But this number can be changed by signaling. We plan to propose to lower down it and collect this feedback from the community.
Okay,
But
thanks.
mhm. But we really like with the current situation that we have right now, that we had the idea that security of a public network should not be a function of price of the native token, right? So that was the idea, because if you think about many staking consensuses, they're saying, price should go up, because if prices go down, we're decreasing security of this underlying proof of stake system. And here we have a live example that that's not the case, like not always the case, right? That security can be hidden within the staking consensus, which is, if we think in terms of components, it's like a dApp, right? It's a dApp which is running on chain with some specialized users of this dApp. And there is a much more funds locked in this dApp. I think on xDAI it's like 500, almost 500,000 stake tokens locked in this dApp, and it's much more than the amount of native currency issued on this chain, right? So that's a good example that this type of chains are possible, and the other security paradigms are possible, and this I can say that it doesn't mean that it's not going to break one day, right? But what we see on xDAI, that this concept is working for quite a long, right?
And regarding I guess I don't want to call it revenue, but the rewards, is it that the fees that are consumed are being distributed among validators, or?
Yeah, that's so there is a variable which is defining the maximum APR from all staked coins. What is different in our staking consensus from other consensuses? So in many consensuses, there is a concept of pool, right? So pool is a validator, and usually some delegators which are staking on top of this validator, right? And they're considered as a pool, right? Because it's pool tokens from validator and all delegators. So let's say right now on xDAI there are 15 pools, right? And on these pools, users who delegated on validators, they made their stakes on different validators, right? And they distributed it based on their own decision. But what is different in our consensus from other consensuses is that all stakes of all delegators and all validators are going into one pool, and this pool is distributed equally between all selected validators, right? So it's possible that it's possible that delegators on some pool will get more reward than delegators on another pool, and they can get more than 15% APR from their stake because they had this condition within staking epoch. And this will drive other delegators to move their stake from less profitable validators to more profitable validators. And ideally, this should make all validators and delegators equally distributed. So all like 15, let's say right now we have 15 validators. So all 15 validators will have equal distribution of staking tokens. That was the idea, to prevent a supernode attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, recently it was an attack by centralized exchanges when they used, I think it was on Steam, right? And they basically, I will not give my opinion, but you can read about this type of attack on open internet, how exchanges with large amount of staked coins can get advantages over, let's say, protocols, right? Yeah, that was the idea. So to summarize, the maximum APR that the protocol can produce is 15% APR from all staked coins, but distribution within for different roles is different and based on game theoretical mechanisms, right? That we put into the staking consensus.
Mm-hmm. I think Pros has a question if you want to jump on
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Thank you. I was curious, like, how the cost is for using the bridge between the two, because like obviously huge implications for paying and all sorts of applications. But yeah, I was curious how cheap that would be. Just thinking about MakerDAO and how much DAI we end up sending out. Like, it's a pretty huge innovation if the bridge is cheap to use.
Well, so it's hard to create magic on Ethereum mainnet, right? So when we send DAI to the bridge, it costs as much as sending DAI to another account, right? So, but bridges are whitelisted on the xDAI side, so it costs zero for validators to send to basically relay on another side. The exit from xDAI to mainnet is paid by users, right? So that's the bridge used to be subsidized for over 2 years. We paid hundreds of ether to grow the this adoption of xDAI and paid for users. But with more and more people using xDAI, there started to be some like abuse on bridges, and the bridge switched to self-transfer mode. So basically, users are paying for exit whenever they want. There are several options for fiat on ramp, and this can skip this type of spending for users. Well, they will get another tax on getting from fiat to xDAI, but this is possible, right? So DAI can be xDAI can be created from bridge DAI, but also can be created by someone selling xDAI directly, and this can be cheaper than bridging. Yeah, we're looking for more fiat on ramp platforms. One more option that we actually started to explore recently, because DAI is available on other layer 2 and layer 1 solutions. So why not to have like 2 minters for one native coin? So just imagine we have DAI on Ethereum locked into bridge, and also we have DAI from another side chain, and we can use 2 bridges, basically 2 minters for one native token, right? And the users can select to which network they want to exit. And let's say in the UI, it can be like, okay, you want to exit from xDAI. You want to pay, I don't know, $20 fee to exit to mainnet, or I don't want to promote any other side chains, like less fees to exit to Binance Smart Chain, for example, right? Which is one of our main competitors, but also they have a great off ramp, right? So on Binance Smart Chain, you can exit from Smart Chain to centralized exchange, and for that it's quite cheap. So that's the idea here, that one native token can be minted by 2 different bridges. We call it minters, and those minters can be located on different chains, right? And eventually, Ethereum is not going to be a center of our let's say crypto universe, right? So most likely we'll see several big players. Like in every industry, we have 2-3 big players. So that likely will be 2-3 big chains which will take the massive this amount of load from Ethereum, and likely will be some cheaper options. So eventually, this will be cheaper to exit and enter to side chains. Yeah. Sorry for long answers.
No, all good. Thank you. So Mio, do you want to jump on the mic, or you don't have it and I can read it? I'm not sure. We cannot hear you. So, all right. I guess I'll just read the question. So the question from Mia was, will stakers be eventually able to get rewards coming from using the tokens, DAI and other ERC20 locked in the bridge for some extra profit?
Yeah, so we built integration with DSR back in times, and also converted. That was one proposal that we had before, to convert all locked DAI into chai. So we used to be one of the biggest users of chai at some time. But you know, it didn't generate enough reward to be meaningful for users. And you know, there are other ways to get upside on your locked DAI, right? Some DEXs or some swap platforms where DAI can be locked. But for now, we think that it's not the it's not security wise. It's not the case for us, right? So most likely all DAI which is used for the native token will be locked in the pure form and will not be wrapped until someone proposes a governance proposal and governors of the bridge, which is mostly companies from Ethereum community. They will approve it, so that's possible to change this. But let's say my personal opinion that it's better to keep less risks on this part, because you know locked DAI is the essential part of xDAI, right? So that's the idea here.
And just to mention, validators do receive a very small fee for validating in xDAI. So they do receive transaction fees, but it's a very low amount. It's not enough to incentivize them.
Yes, and these transaction fees are mostly for like denial of service protection and transaction prioritization. So their profit, so more network effect xDAI gets, more valuable is their staking token, and more interested they are in providing this validation service. So that's the idea.
I'll just quickly mention a few more things about xDAI, and then we can have Patricio speak a little bit on his integration with POAP. So one thing that makes xDAI really attractive to developers is not only just the integrations that we have, but also the tools that are available. You know, a developer can easily migrate their application just by basically changing a few parameters and then use the same tools that they're used to. There's plenty of wallets to use. As Igor mentioned, we have client support from both Open Ethereum and Nethermind, as well as the tools that people would expect to be able to use. We actually just have a recent integration with Dune Analytics, and we're putting out a cool dashboard on our different staking protocols. So that leads me to some of the projects that have migrated, and this is pretty much in the past year for a majority of these projects. We've seen Gnosis come over, and the safe is now on xDAI, and Omen is coming very soon. Some other DeFi types of applications with Circles and Perpetual Protocol. HoneySwap is a Uniswap fork on xDAI right now that's receiving some traction just because trades are, you know, pennies versus tens of dollars or more. And then one application, again, we've seen governance applications, NFTs, games, communities, so kind of a wide range of different types of applications coming to xDAI. And we're seeing things boil down a little bit more to DeFi interest as well as NFTs, because you can mint NFTs on xDAI for much cheaper than on Ethereum right now, and then still distribute them on the mainnet. So one of these games that recently launched, maybe some of you got a chance to play it, was Dark Forest. They're actually still running their latest round. So with Dark Forest in version 0.5, there were 1,000 players playing 8,000 ETH calls per second at times. And we saw 933,000 transactions and 570 billion gas used. So it was quite an amazing experiment. And we'd actually run a prior beta round where we saw this kind of usage and had to look back at our infrastructure a little bit and really optimize some of it so that it was available for this round. And it worked really well. And this is the type of application that's really thriving on xDAI right now, because it can, this is an impossible application on Ethereum, right? $60 million it would have cost. And so projects can come to xDAI, and there were tons of people at this point using DAI, using the xDAI, and so it really brought a lot of accolades to the chain. As you can see here, there were at this point right now, xDAI is the third most used chain based on transactions.
Based on one analytic, so one crypto analytic reported it. It's not that we're reporting it.
I grabbed this from somewhere else.
Yeah. So what I want to add here is that all these transactions they used xDAI to pay for transaction fees, and eventually they used DAI, right? So when people are interacting with this type of application, they're always using xDAI, right? So they're getting it, so they're getting DAI, and this is creating massive usage of DAI in microtransactions, right? So I understand that it's a wrapped form, but still it's when people are seeing these transactions and in their wallets, they see that they're executed in xDAI, right? So for them, that's basically the usage of DAI. We're already so the statistic is a bit outdated. So we crossed this 1 million transaction limit, and there are 1.5 thousand players of this playtest, and also it creates massive load on reading from the blockchain. So xDAI is serving about 30% of mainnet load served by Infura. So it's a lot of traffic that going on, and people are using it and playing. And you can search for Dark Forest on Twitter. You will see how excited people are, and all of them are using this form of DAI, right? So which is good for adoption, right?
Great. Well,
super cool.
I'll turn things over, I think, to Patricio. Of course, open it up to any other questions as well. And we have plenty of resources also available for people who want to learn more.
Do you want to plug the addresses in before Patricio, or that should be your last? Oh, it's on the slide. Okay.
Yeah, it's on the slide here. I can leave it available, or we can switch the screen sharing off. However you'd like to do, and we can.
We'll put it on the show notes.
Sounds good.
Patricio, if you want to.
Yeah, thank you. So when I was asked to present our experience on xDAI, it was a no-brainer decision for me, because xDAI has helped POAP skyrocket on its growth plan on a way that couldn't have happened with any other technology that was available. So I'm very happy to be here, and I can easily make a case to explain why xDAI and its token stake, because let's not forget that this is a collateral application, I can easily make a case for why xDAI and stake have a strong product market fit on the space, and it makes a lot of sense for the token to be available in vaults in MakerDAO. So a quick explanation of what POAP does. We started on December 19, so 2 years ago, or a year and 18 and 11 months ago, so almost 2 years ago on December. And what we do is every time a person goes to an event, that person has the opportunity to get a non-fungible token that works as a proof that they've been part of that event. And one of the reasons why, or the main reason why we started this protocol, it's because we wanted to showcase that Ethereum and decentralized ledger technologies like blockchains had reason to exist besides financial applications. We made the case that the idea of getting proofs of people attending events wasn't new, because you had check-ins on Facebook and you had Foursquare like 10 years ago that later on went to be called Swarm or something. But all those systems were lacking guarantees about the actual proofs, because you couldn't tell whether the organizer was issuing fake proofs to their friends, or you as a collector of proofs, because we call them proofs because we are technically speaking, but the truth is that they are like a sticker or patches. If you're a collector of these stickers, how could you be sure that they are yours forever if we've seen many times since GeoCities or Flickr or even Foursquare that if companies don't make money, they don't have an incentive for keeping running the infrastructure that you use for your collections. So we say that POAP is like Foursquare, a system for collecting badges, but it's permissionless, so anyone can issue badges. You don't need to ask Foursquare for permission or pay them. And the badges are only yours. So you can be completely sure that if we disappear, all the information you need is still available on the blockchain or on different sources, because everything is open source. So we started doing this thing on Ethereum. It has done well. It helped many people understand this concept of true ownership of assets that are only yours and nobody can take out from you. Because if we were to run POAP on AWS or in any other cloud computing provider, how could you tell that the database administrator or a different third party couldn't be issuing fake tokens or seizing your tokens if, for example, they got a subpoena? Like if you were using Facebook or Foursquare and you have a very nice collection of all the places you've been, but for some reason you are either in a sanctioned country or you are a target of criminal prosecution, any authority could, and this is extreme, but I guess in the context of MakerDAO, I don't have to explain deeply why decentralization matters. So we started pushing this true ownership narrative, and it hasn't well. In the last 2 years, we've been to almost all Ethereum events. We became very popular. Almost every Ethereum person that ever been to an event has a POAP. With the pandemic, we switched from in-person events to virtual, and that has also gone well. We are very satisfied with our metrics. But then we needed to plan what was our next step and our next objective, and this is where xDAI comes to play. All before was the intro. Since we started, we knew that we were running an experiment. We knew that it was nice to explain true ownership to people using Ethereum and using the mainnet, but it was ridiculous to explain. It was ridiculous to pretend to hold completely valueless proofs that doesn't have any monetary value in the market on a highly decentralized network, especially one that runs proof of stake, because, and this is an inexact comparison, but the issuance of each POAP NFT had an equivalent cost of like running a car for 1,000 miles if you could calculate the environmental footprint. The amount, each POAP issuance has taken on mainnet like 200,000 gas units, and each block has 10 million gas units. So we were using like 2% of each block. And if you calculate the cost in hash rate, it was insane. It was almost embarrassing that we were destroying the planet just for getting valueless proofs. So we knew from the very beginning we had to move to a different chain. And I had to admit that we kind of always knew that it was going to be some sort of POA network. xDAI didn't exist at that time as a ready-to-use thing, but we knew that POA networks were going to be out there. So we kind of had that idea. But because the gas prices were somewhat low, we were minting at 1 Shiwei in mainnet for a long time, this wasn't made a priority. Late March, March 2020, we reached a point where we couldn't keep subsidizing the gas price of mainnet. Our users weren't happy paying between $1 to $10 per proof. Some were already doing so, but we were losing most of our user base. So before before deploying on xDAI, which is what we somewhat knew we were going to do, but for some reason we didn't, we did a very comprehensive survey of every L2 solution on the market. We leveraged this event called the Reddit L2 Bake Off, which was like a competition for different L2 solutions to provide a turn-on-key product for ready to scale to hyperscale compared to what we have now. And not that it was a waste of time. It was a nice experiment, but we end up reinforcing that xDAI was the best match for what we needed, because these sort of proofs that are apparently valueless do need to have strong security guarantees. These thing that they need to be censorship resistant, but they also need to be cheap. And when we say cheap, we need them to be really cheap, like ideally as cheap as possible. And now we say xDAI network cheap, because when we were exploring different networks, some based on these brand new cryptographic models like CK rollups and others like that, we still had some mainnet cost, very little, because depending on the model of the scaling solution or the rollup or whatever it's used, the amount of data you write onto the Ethereum mainnet varies, but it was still more than we were willing to afford. So when we moved to mainnet, to xDAI, we came up with a brand new model. We don't use the token bridge because we don't really need the guarantees and the functionality that token bridges. There are a couple of different token bridges. We don't really need that functionality, and it had higher engineering costs. So we keep some trustful components on the token issue and token minting. But the way this works, and this is, I guess, the important thing on explaining how POAP works with xDAI, when you get a POAP token, you are offered where do you want to mint it. So you can mint on xDAI, which comes check by default. And if you don't do anything, you get it on xDAI. People love it because it works seamlessly. It doesn't even feel a blockchain application. You don't need to sign a message. You keep using your Ethereum name system name. So if you have an ENS name, it resolves the same way as if you were in mainnet. Using Block Scout, it's an experience that people like. So you get all the same experience at almost no cost. And because minting 5,000 POAPs cost $1, which is a cost that it's so negligible that we are paying it, but if our users were paying it, they don't matter either. But we still keep all the flow and all the functionality for whoever wants to have it on mainnet. And we also offer a migrating tool, which is very seamless and allows people to move their POAPs to mainnet, not being technically savvy, not really knowing what's going on under the hood. They just pay the mainnet fees and they have the POAP on mainnet, and it shows if they are using a wallet or a device or a dApp that doesn't support xDAI. They have all the same functionality. And we've been doing this for like 4 months or 6 months now, and it's been a killing success. People are loving xDAI. They come to ask how could we achieve such a smooth experience, and we tell them it wasn't that hard. Everything on the xDAI ecosystem, it's pretty much ready to use. You have the same tooling you have on mainnet. People, if you need any support, xDAI runs a Discord that has support the stuff around the clock. Block Scout, it's a powerful explorer. It's quite different to what we all know, which is Etherscan, but I dare to say that in some specific functionality, it can even be said that it's better. And the fact that it is open source allows you to do many more things that you couldn't do on Etherscan, because Etherscan is a fantastic product that we all really love for many reasons, and it's hard to match. But not being open source, it's really a turn off, and it's a deal breaker in certain opportunities. And we keep saying this thing that you can have the guarantee that if we disappear, I mean, we, the POAP team, you keep your things, but you can't say the same about Etherscan. If there's a nuclear bomb in Malaysia and the whole Etherscan team disappears, I don't really know what happens to all the functionality. I mean, for the whole ecosystem, it will be devastating because we have such a strong dependence on Etherscan. I wouldn't even know how to verify the source code of a contract out of a bytecode and do many other things I do thanks to Etherscan. Etherscan is one of my favorite companies on the space, but the truth is that having Block Scout as an open source protocol, it's so pleasant and it's so comfortable. So this has been the brief explanation of why xDAI has been so cool for POAP. And regarding the Collateral application, which is something I personally care because I'm invested on all the ecosystems involved. I'm obviously invested in POAP. I'm personally invested on xDAI because we acquired a lot of stake with the POAP treasury, and I invested in the Maker ecosystem. So if the Maker governors don't accept a stake as a collateral, and I'm going to go even further, if they don't accept it or they don't put a nice stability fee or a nice ceiling, I'm going to be highly disappointed because its qualifications, stakes token qualifications, are arguably much better than many other collaterals in the Maker system. And I don't want to name names because I don't think it's productive and useful. And I think Maker needs to be neutral, and that's why the MKR holders vote, and that's it. But if anyone is going to vote for not onboarding xDAI, or if someone is apathetic, please reach out to me privately or in any channel or post in the forums, although I'm not very active on the forums because it's a lot of work to follow them. But I can make very strong cases, and I can argue against any reason you may have to not onboard a stake, whether it's liquidity, distribution, sources, product market fit, or anything. I honestly believe that it's an easy pass, and if it doesn't pass, I would like to ask all those people, why have you made pass so many other collaterals that don't meet the same standards?
I think I might be beating other people to the punch and say, please bring those comments to the forum. I think in the MIP application, those would be pretty great. Just a couple visuals of what you see the growth looks like or why you think it's a good case would be awesome. And even if you have thoughts on a recommendation about the size of the debt ceiling, I think Risk would be able to then run with that when they do their evaluation. So yeah, those are all great statements. And I think just putting up what you have, it'd be awesome. Even if it is hard to follow the forum, totally understand. But yeah, those are such great comments.
Making an opinion on a stability fee and ceiling, it's really hard for someone that it's not full-time Maker, because stability fees and ceilings are mainly have to be designed compared to other stability fees and ceilings. So it's not something that it's on the vacuum. So I wish I was educated and informed on what the current conditions are, because they've been varying a lot since I was more deep into Maker. So I couldn't really make a case. My intention is to establish strong fundamentals for governors to understand that this really makes a lot of sense. And you're right that I said reach out to me privately, but what would be best for the community and the protocol is that if you are going to vote against, explain why on the forums, so we can make a case and maybe we make you change your mind.
Yeah, I was going to add that arguably it's hard even for the team working full-time for Maker to establish the debt ceilings, and there's a lot of internal debate every single time, and people trying to adjust the risk to make sure that everything is safe. So it's definitely not an easy task.
Yeah, out of the two variables, the one I personally care the most as a stakeholder is the stability fee, because if ceilings are reached, we can always vote for raising them, and it's not that bad. But if stability fees are too high, you have to consider, or the risk people have to consider, that a stake offers in-protocol incentives. So if the costs are too high, there's not going to be anyone using stake vaults, because there are other things you can do with those assets. Like
Sure.
if you don't get too much leverage, or the leverage you get, well, of course, because I forgot to mention the C ratio. If the C ratio is too high, it may not make sense to leverage on Maker, because it might be being too expensive compared to easy staking or the Uniswap incentive, or even delegating to a validator.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that it's not just the governors, it's also the risk team that's going to probably prepare a report explaining a bit if they see any type of risk and whatnot. Then there's the smart contract teams that analyze the code of the collateral types that we onboard. And finally, we have the oracles team, right, to make sure that the price that we're reporting, and this is looping back to the C ratio you were mentioning, Patricia. So it's important to have everyone checking each other out and reaching a decision that makes sense for everyone. But yeah, for sure, very excited to have you guys.
There's a comment by I am Meow. Having stake vaults will take out the stake from staking, right? Its main functionality of a stake is staking, and Maker will check a white. Yeah, that's by design.
Can I join on the question? Yeah, the idea of stake token is to be used in staking consensus, right? But when we think about security of staking consensuses, it makes sense that there are ways of liquidity to be removed from circulations, which is not staking consensus, which is beneficial for the staking consensus, right? So if we remove some liquidity for what I mean, as a community, we remove some liquidity from circulation. Let's say some part of the community will put it into vaults. That's good for security of staking, because less stake tokens will be available in circulation, right? But on the other hand, if there is a demand for the staking token, and people are interested in providing more security to consensus because they think that that's more, let's say, profitable for them to be delegators or validators on the network instead of using stake token as a collateral, for example, in some debt positions or in some loans and so forth. Then they will unwrap their vaults and put stake tokens into the consensus, right? So that's great to have options to remove staking tokens from circulation. And when networks are bootstrapped, let's say proof of stake networks, they have a type of attack which is known as like nothing at stake, right? Like there is like no value that is protecting the network and so forth, right? But when networks are established, and there are mechanisms of purchasing token and selling token, putting into staking. There are always there is always interest to find new ways of utilizing this token, right? Especially for removing from circulation. And vaults is a great example of removing collateral from circulation, right? Because
Yeah, we actually had
Yeah.
a governance attack not long ago where a flash loan was used to borrow Maker and vote in one of our executives' votes not long ago. So we're actually exploring different possibilities as a community to see how we can secure and make sure that we remove a little bit of the liquidity from the market. So it's definitely interesting. Something that I wanted to, and I shared it before, but I wanted to show this is the POP that the MakerDAO contribution did for Q3, and we're about to release the one for Q4. So hopefully next week, I think that it's scheduled. So yeah, it's something
So,
that we gave.
Yeah,
our
one of the
contributors.
things we are proud in POAP is that many of the top protocols on the Ethereum ecosystem issue POAPs. Things like Chainlink, Maker, all the Wire ecosystem, xDAI soon. They are all integrated our technology. And we really appreciate that endorsement. And I guess it indirectly makes sense that the network we use for a product that the ecosystem seems to like makes sense to, it deserves to have its token as a collateral in Maker.
Absolutely. So yeah, I already saw the image for Q4 and it looks quite nice. So looking forward for the release. The question that I had for you guys, and I don't know if it's more for you, Patricio, or for the xDAI team, the way I understood it is that L2 chains do settlements every couple weeks or so. So if I mint a POAP in xDAI, am I supposed to receive it after 2 weeks in the Ethereum, or you guys are not doing those kind of like settlements or rollups? I'm not entirely sure if my question makes any sense. Hopefully it does.
The question is right, but it depends on how you apply it. On the context of POAP, by design, we don't settle on the main chain unless the user explicitly requests it and pays for the my minting fees, which is something you only do if you are doing something with the POAP that requires mainnet, or if you're a decentralization maximalist or an Ethereum passionate person. That's on the dApp layer, on the application layer, which is the one I control. I guess they can answer what the plan is for xDAI network, because I guess checkpointing is something that might make sense in the future.
Yeah, so there are different security models for bridges, and also there are different types of bridges, right? So the bridge which can bridge NFTs from xDAI to mainnet, which could have been used for POAP. We're working on it and plan to release it in Q1 2021. So it will work as we call as OmniBridge. So OmniBridge means that there is no need to set up mapping between contracts, right? There is no like need of administrators who will manage assets which can be bridged. Like any assets can be bridged which are following the standard. In this case, NFT standard. And the model of bridges that we have, it's like threshold signature type of security model. There is some disadvantage, right? Because it's some people consider it as not as decentralized as something else. But in reality, it's the fastest possible bridge, right? If you take a chain with let's say instant finality, then it can be NFT can be settled in one block, right? But in our case, both Ethereum and xDAI, they both are with probabilistic finality. So that's why bridge is waiting for like 8 blocks to observe settlement of transactions. Let's say when we want to move an NFT from xDAI to mainnet, the bridge will wait for 8 blocks to achieve finality, and after that this will be relayed. So there is no need to wait for weeks like in optimistic models. There is no need to wait hours in checkpointing models. So that's like 8 blocks and that's it. So that's the xDAI bridge is the fastest bridge which is possible with the current state of Ethereum. So like there is no way of making it faster without compromising security, right? So
Nice.
so that's
Looking forward to it. Do we have any last questions before we call it a day? Okay, Patricio, last question for you. How can people learn more about POAP and find you, follow you, etc.?
We are very active on Twitter and Discord, and we are constantly onboarding new people, especially event organizers. So for the community, if you run events, please issue POAPs on them so your community can have proof that they participated. And if you attend events and they don't have POAP, please nag the organizers so then issue POAPs. The process couldn't be easier, and the more issuers use it, the best it is for all of us, because it's all about network effects. If all events organizers use the same standard for issuing this proof, someday you may have a reliable, trustless event proof system that can enable many other cases in the decentralized world, like identity and reputation and tracking of previous activities. So do reach out on Twitter and Discord if you have any comment, and we would be happy to work with you.
Yeah, totally agree. Regarding the couldn't be easier, I actually wrote a tiny tutorial on how to create a POAP for your event. So it's on definotes.com and then under tutorials. And yeah, it's super straightforward. I put some screenshots for everyone to see with FAQ with the answers from Patricio. So again, super easy to do. So yeah, we encourage people to check it out. Okay, so let's keep on the discussions for the forum in the forum. Sorry, regarding stake. And yeah, looking forward to see how this evolve. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you everyone
Thanks so
for your
much.
time.
Yeah.
thank you very much for the time.
Have a nice one.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye everyone.